The Yellow Wallpaper by Charlotte Perkins Gilman. It is very seldom that mere ordinary people like John and myself secure ancestral halls for the summer. A colonial mansion, a hereditary castle, I would say, a haunted house, and reach the height of romantic felicity. But that would be asking too much of fate. Still, I will proudly declare that there is something queer about it. Elsie, why should it be let so cheaply, and why have stood so long unattended? John laughs at me, of course, but one expects that in marriage. John is practical in the extreme. He has no patience with faith, an intense horror of superstition, and he scoffs openly at any talk of things not to be felt and seen and put down in figures. John is a physician, and perhaps I would say it not to living soul, of course, but this is dead paper and a great relief to my mind. Perhaps there was one reason I did not get well faster. You see, he does not believe I am sick. And what can one do? If a physician of high standing and one's own husband assures friends and relatives that there is really nothing the matter with one but temporary nervous depression, a slight hysterical tendency, what is one to do? My brother is also a physician, and one of high standing, and he says the exact same thing. So I take phosphates or phosphites, whichever it is, and tonics, and journeys, and air, and exercise, and am absolutely forbidden to work until I am well again. Personally, I disagree with their ideas. Personally, I believe that congenial work with excitement and change will do me good. But what is one to do? I did write for a while in spite of them, but it does exhaust me a good deal, having it be so sly about it, or else meet with heavy opposition. I sometimes fancy that in my condition, if I had less opposition, or more society and stimulus, but John says the very worst thing that I can do is think about my condition, and I confess it always makes me feel bad. So I will let it alone and talk about the house. The most beautiful place. It's quite alone, standing well back from the road, quite 3 miles from the village. It makes me think of English places that you read about, for there are hedges and walls and gates that lock, and lots of separate little houses for the gardeners, and people. There is a delicious garden. I never saw such a garden, large and shady, full of box-boarded paths, and lined with long grape-covered arbors with seats under them. There were greenhouses, too, but they are all broken now. There was some legal trouble, I believe, something about their heirs and co-heirs, and anyhow, the place has been empty for years. That spoils my ghostliness, I am afraid, but I don't care. There is something strange about the house. I can feel it. I even said so to John one moonlight evening, but he said what I felt was a drought, and shut the window. I get unreasonably angry with John sometimes. I'm sure I never used to be so sensitive. I think it's due to this nervous condition. But John says if I feel so I shall neglect proper self-control, so I take pains to control myself. But him, at least, and that make me very tired. I don't like our room one bit. I wanted one downstairs that opened to a piazza and had roses all over the windows, and such pretty old-fashioned chintz hangings, but John would not hear of it. He said there was only one window, and not room for 2 beds, and no need room for him if he took another. He is very careful and loving, and hardly lets me stir without special direction. I have a scheduled prescription for each hour in the day. He takes care of me. He takes all care for me, and I feel so ungrateful not to value it. He said we came here solely on my account, that I was to have a respectful night, have a perfect night and all the air I could get. Your exercise depends on your strength, my dear, he said, and so your food somewhat on your appetite, but the air you can absorb all the time. So we took the nursery at the top of the house. It's a big airy room, the whole floor nearly, with windows that look always, and air and sunshine galore. It was nursery first, and then playground, and then gymnasium. And I should judge, for the windows are bared for little children, and there are rings and things in the wall. The paint and paper look as if the boys' school had used it. It is stripped off, the paper, in great patches, all around the head of my bed, as far as I can reach, and in a great place on the other side of the room low down. I never saw a worse paper in my life. One of those sprawling, flamboyant patterns committing every artistic sin. It is dull enough to confuse the eye and following, pronounced enough to constantly urinate, an evoked study, and when you follow the lame, uncertain curves for a little distance, they suddenly commit suicide, plunge off at outrageous angles, destroy themselves in unheard of contradiction. The color is repellent, almost revolting, a smoldering, unclean yellow, strangely faded by the slow-turning sunlight. It is a dull yet lucid orange in some places, a sticky sulphur tint in others. No wonder the children hated it. I should hate it myself if I had to live in this room so long. There comes John. I must put this away. He hates to have me write a word. We have been here 2 weeks, and I haven't felt like writing before that first day. I am sitting by the window now, up in his atrocious nursery, and there is nothing to hinder my writing as much as I please, save lack of strength. John is away all day, and even some nights when his cases are serious. I'm glad my case is not serious. But these nervous troubles are dreadfully depressing. John does not know how much I really suffer. He knows there is no reason to suffer, and that satisfies him. Of course it is only nervousness. It does weigh on me, not to do my duty in any way. I meant to be such a help to John, such a real rest and comfort, and here I am, a comparative burden already. No one would believe what an effort it is to do what little I am able, to dress and entertain and order things. It is fortune Mary is so good with baby, such a dear baby. And yet I cannot be with him. It makes me so nervous. I suppose John never was nervous in his life. He laughs at me about this wallpaper. At first he meant to repaper the room, but afterwards he said that I was letting it get the better of me, and that nothing was worse for a nervous patient than to give away such fancies. He said that after the wallpaper was changed, it would be the heavy bedstead, and then the barred windows, and then the gate at the head of the stairs, and so on. You know the place is doing you good, he said. And really, dear, I don't care to renovate the house just for a 3 months' rental. Then do let us go downstairs, I said. There are such pretty rooms there. Then he took me in his arms and called me a blessed little goose, and said he would go down cellar if I wished, and have it whitewashed into the bargain. But he was right enough about the beds and the windows and things. It is as airy and comfortable a room as one need wish, and of course I would not be silly to make him uncomfortable just for a whim. I'm really getting fond of the big room, all but that horrid paper. Out of one of the windows I can see the garden, those mysterious deep-shaped arbors, the righteous old-fashioned flowers and bushes and gnarly trees. Out of another I get a lovely view of the bay and the little private wharf belonging to the estate. There is a beautifully shaded lane that runs down there from the house. I always fancy I see people walking in this numerous paths and arbors, but John has cautioned me not to give way to the fancy in the least. He says that with my imaginative power and habit of story-making, a nervous weakness like mine is sure to lead to all manner of excited fancies, and I ought to use my will and good sense to check the tendencies, so I try. I think sometimes that if I were only well enough to write a little, it would relieve the press of ideas, and rest me. But I find I get pretty tired when I try. It is so discouraging not to have any advice and companionship about my work. When I get really well, John says we can ask Cousin Henry and Julia down for a long visit, but he says he would as soon put firework in my pillowcase to let me have those so many people about now. I wish I could get well faster, but I must not think about this. This paper looks to me as if it knew what a vicious influence it had. There is a recurrent spot where the pattern rolls like broken neck, and 2 bubbly eyes stare at you upside down. I got positively angry with the impertinence of it and the everlastingness. Up and down and sideways they crawl, and those absurd, unblinking eyes are everywhere. There is one place where 2 birds didn't match, and the eyes go all up and down the line. One's a little higher than the other. I never saw so much expression in an intimate thing before, and we all know how much expression they have. I used to lie awake as a child, and get more entertainment and terror out of blanky walls and furniture than most children could find in a toy store. I remember what a kindly wink the knobs of our big old bureau used to have, and there was one chair that always seemed like a strong friend. I used to feel that if any other things looked too fierce, I would always hop into that chair and be safe. The furniture in this room is no worse than inharmonious. However, as we had to bring it All from upstairs. I suppose when this was used as a playground they had to take the nursery things out. And no wonder. I never saw such ravages as the children have made here. The wallpaper, as I said before, is torn off in spots, and its slickest closer than a brother. They must have had perseverance as well as hatred. Then the floor is scratched and gouged and splintered. The plaster itself is dug out here and there, and this great bed, which we all found in the room, looks as if it has been through the wars. But I don't mind it a bit. Only the paper. There comes John's sister, only a dear girl as she is, and so careful of me. I must not let her find me writing. She's a perfect and enthusiastic housekeeper, and hopes for no better profession. I really believe she thinks of it is the writing which made me sick. But I can write when she is out, and see her a long way off from the windows.